Welcome to the Human Meme Podcast. I'm David Bowles, and today we're going to talk about the body on stage. Here is a question I have not been able to stop thinking about. When an actor walks onto a stage and says the words "a playwright has written," whose body is it? Not legally. Legally, the question is settled. The actor owns the body, the playwright owns the words, and an intricate web of union contracts and intellectual property law keeps the two from colliding in ways that require attorneys. The legal answer is clean. I am asking a different question. I am asking what happens at the level of consciousness when a human being stands in a defined space and pretends to be someone else. Whose experience is the audience receiving? The characters? The actors? The playwrights? Some fourth thing that does not exist until all three converge in a room where strangers have agreed to sit in the dark and watch? I have spent more than 40 years in the theater, and I do not have a settled answer. What I have instead is a book. The book is called Miscast: Who Owns the Story on Stage? It is published by David Bowles Books, and it is available now in ebook, paperback, and PDF. I will tell you more about it as we go. But the book is not what I want to talk about today. The book is a consequence. What I want to talk about is the problem the book was written to address, which is the problem of the body. Start with something simple. You are watching a play. A woman enters. She's in her 50s. She wears a housecoat. She carries a rosary. She speaks with an accent that places her family somewhere between County Kilkenny and the south side of Chicago. Her name is Mary Tyrone, and she is addicted to morphine, and the addiction is figured in specifically Catholic terms: confession, guilt, penance, the retreat into a version of the self that the church would have approved of before the fall. Eugene O'Neill wrote her. He based her on his mother. He gave her an Irish name, an Irish faith, an Irish shame, and an Irish family, whose pathologies are inseparable from their ethnicity because the ethnicity is not decoration. It is architecture. Remove the Irishness and the structure collapses. The play does not work. The family does not make sense. The drinking follows different patterns. The guilt attaches to different objects. The silences mean different things. Now, change the body. Put a performer on that stage who carries none of that cultural inheritance. Not because the performer lacks talent, not because the performer cannot act, but because the body itself does not contain the history that the playwright embedded in the character. The audience is now watching a performance of surfaces. The words are correct, the blocking is correct, the emotional beats may even be correct. But the thing underneath, the thing O'Neill was writing about, the thing that makes the Tyrone family specifically the Tyrone family, and not a generic family with generic problems, has been removed. It has been removed not by the playwright, who specified exactly what the family is, but by someone else. A director, an institution, a policy. Who authorized that removal? This is where the question of consciousness enters, because the theater is the only art form that requires a living body to mediate between the creator and the audience. A painting does not need a body. A novel does not need a body. A film needs a body, but the body is recorded and fixed. It does not change from performance to performance. the theater is different. Every night, a living human being stands in a space and channels a character that a playwright invented, and the audience experiences both simultaneously, the character and the body that carries the character. The two cannot be separated. They should not be separated. The attempt to separate them, to treat the body as a neutral vessel that can be filled with any character regardless of what the playwright specified, is the central error of contemporary American casting policy. And it is the error my book was written to name. I want to be careful here, because the error has been made in the name of justice, and justice is not something I take lightly. The argument for non-traditional casting, in its original and best form, was an argument for access. It said, there are performers of extraordinary talent who have been excluded from roles because of their race, their gender, their disability, and that exclusion is wrong when the role does not require a specific identity. That argument was correct in 1986 when the Non-Traditional Casting Project was founded, and it remains correct now. If a role does not require a specific race, a specific gender, a specific body, then excluding performers on those grounds is bigotry, and bigotry has no place in the theater or anywhere else. But here is where the argument turned, and where the turning matters. Somewhere between 1986 and 2021, the principle shifted. It went from, let qualified performers compete for roles where identity is not germane, to cast performers from historically excluded groups, in numbers reflecting a significant and representative proportion of total roles. Those are not the same principle. The first defers to the text. The second overrides it. The first asks whether the playwright specified an identity. The second asks whether the production has enough people from the right categories. The first is an artistic question. The second is an administrative one. And the administrative question now has contractual force, because in 2021, the Dramatists Guild published an inclusion rider that asks playwrights to agree in writing to redirect their copyright authority toward institutional demographic objectives. I am a member of the Dramatists Guild. I have been a member since July 2nd, 1984, member number 45,010. My freshman playwriting teacher at the University of Nebraska-Lincoln told me to join, and I did, and I have paid my dues without interruption for more than 40 years. I say this not to establish authority, but to establish standing. I am criticizing my own guild from inside my own guild because I believe the guild has made an error that contradicts its own founding purpose, which is to protect the playwright. Let me come back to consciousness because that is what this podcast has always been about, and because the question of casting is, at bottom, a question about what happens when one consciousness attempts to inhabit another. The Greeks understood this. When Aeschylus put a masked man on stage and had him speak as Clytemnestra, the mask was not a disguise. It was a technology. It was a device that allowed the audience to see the character without being distracted by the individual. The mask said, this is not a man, this is a queen. This is a mother. This is a woman who killed her husband in the bath and who will answer for it. The mask liberated the actor from identity so that the character could exist. The body underneath was irrelevant because the body was hidden. We do not wear masks anymore. The body is visible. The body is legible. The body carries race, gender, age, disability, cultural inheritance, and the audience reads all of it instantly before a single word is spoken. The playwright who writes a character in the 21st century is writing for a body that will be read. O'Neill knew this. August Wilson knew this. Samuel Beckett knew this with such precision that he sued the American Repertory Theater when they cast women in Endgame, because the bodies he specified were male bodies, and male bodies carry different meanings in a confined space than female bodies do, and those meanings were part of the play. Was Beckett right? I think so. But even if you disagree, consider the principle he was defending. He was not defending the exclusion of women from theater. He was defending the proposition that the playwright creates the characters. The playwright determines what the characters are. And no institution has the right to override that determination. That is the same principle the Dramatists Guild was founded to protect. That is the same principle the Guild's own Bill of Rights affirms. And that is the principle the Guild's inclusion rider contradicts. I wonder sometimes what consciousness looks like from the audience's side of the transaction. You sit in the dark. A body appears in light. You agree, by sitting there, to believe that the body is someone it is not. That agreement is the oldest contract in human civilization. It predates writing. It predates money. It predates law. A group of people gathers, and one of them stands apart. And the one who stands apart becomes someone else, and the group agrees to experience the becoming as if it were real. That is theater. That is the thing we do that no other species does, as far as we know. We watch each other pretend, and the pretending teaches us something about what it means to be the thing we are. What does it teach us if the pretending is governed by a committee? What does it teach us if the body on stage was selected not because the playwright imagined it or the director chose it for artistic reasons, but because a contract writer required a certain demographic proportion? I am not asking this rhetorically. I am asking it as a person who has sat in 1,000 audiences and who has felt the difference between a casting choice that illuminates a text and a casting choice that serves a policy. The audience feels it. The audience may not have the vocabulary to articulate what it feels, but the body knows. The body in the seat knows when the body on the stage is carrying the character the playwright wrote, and the body in the seat knows when it is carrying something else. I wrote Miscast because I wanted to trace that feeling to its source. The source turned out to be 25 centuries deep, running from the Athenian Dionysia, through the Onagata tradition of Japanese kabuki, through the minstrel shows of the American 19th century, through the casting controversies of the American 21st. The book is documented, sourced, argued, and as fair as I know how to make it. It is also, I hope, honest about the places where fairness and honesty diverge, because they do diverge, and the divergence is where the interesting questions live. The interesting question, the one I keep coming back to, is this. If the theater is the art form in which one consciousness inhabits another, then who has the authority to govern the terms of inhabitation? The playwright, who created the consciousness being inhabited? The director, who stages the inhabitation? The institution, which funds and houses the production? Or the audience, which experiences the result? My answer is the playwright. My answer has always been the playwright. The playwright created the character. The playwright determined what the character is. The playwright's authority over that determination is not an administrative convenience. It is the foundational act of dramatic art. Without it, there is no character. There is only a body on a stage, waiting to be told what to mean by whoever holds the contract. The playwright decides. That has always been my position. It is the position of the book, and it is the ground on which I stand. Miscast, Who Owns the Story on Stage, is available now from David Bowles Books in Kindle, ebook, paperback, and free PDF download. You can find it at bowlesbooks.com. For the Human Meme Podcast, I'm David Bowles wishing you a right evening and a brighter tomorrow. Thanks for listening. Be a human meme.